Okay, Dave here. Let's do this. This is we're gonna do guided project light. This is, I guess, one in the first chapter at the end of the first chapter of the app development with Swift book. And there's some changes with the new version of Xcode. So this is going to be for, let's see, what version am I on? Version 11.2, probably the same for 11.3. So let's get started. It's going to ask you to create a new project here. So we're going to click Welcome to Xcode, click the Xcode thing, and not a playground. Don't click this one. Click this one down here. Create an Xcode project. And we're going to make it a single view app. Make sure iOS is selected here. Click Next. And I'm going to call it Guided Light 11.2. Just for funsies. Make sure that something is in here. You type some kind of identifier for this. And also make sure this is set to storyboard, not Swift UI. Swift UI is awesome and cool, but we're learning storyboard for now. Next. And it's going to ask you where to put this. I'm just going to throw it on the desktop for now. Okay, here's the Xcode interface, and if you want, you can watch my introduction to Xcode video, but we're going to jump right in. So what does the book say? So we're going to keep referencing the book and seeing what it wants us to do. Create a new Xcode project. It wants you to look at your storyboard. It wants you to check to make sure the view controller is accurate. Okay, let's do that. So over here on the side, actually you can see, it's hard to see because you have to expand it here, but if you expand this, there's some bunch of files here. These are your Swift files, your code basically. And one of the Swift files is called view controller. And so this is the code that runs, or this is a view controller class. So what we want to do is we want to make sure this text matches what is set in the storyboard. So typically you'll make your own, you'll make more than one view controller, and then you have to associate the code with the view over here. So what I usually do is I click away and click back and just make sure there's a blue border around this when you select it. So like if you select this, it might be different than selecting the whole bar here. So select the whole bar here. It does say view control over here, that's good news. But over here in the sidebar, you want to select this, I don't know what it's called, this one that looks like a flag, American flag. And if you don't see the sidebar, then this is how you hide and unhide that sidebar there. So we've selected the sidebar, and we can see it does say view controller, and that's good. So if we made a second view controller, then you would use a drop-down menu or type in the title. So these two things have to match, basically. So anyhow, it's connected. That's good news. Moving on. It wants you to set your simulator size. Okay, so we're just kind of exploring a little bit of Xcode here. So in the storyboard again, down at the bottom, there's a way to change the device that you're viewing it on, you know. So if it was like a bigger device, it'll look a little different, whatever. That's nice. What else do you want? Book. Okay, it wants us to add a button. This has changed from previous versions of Xcode where the object inspector, I think that's what it's called, or where the objects are located. It's this plus sign now here. Used to be down here, then there was like a floating button up here. Now there's a button here. So click on that, and then you want to find button. What I usually do is, I mean, you can see it right there, but I'll start typing up here, and it'll narrow down the results. Stand by. Okay, so adding a button. There's the button. You could type in B-U-T-T-O-N to filter the results, and you just click and drag it over here. What they want us to do is you see it kind of, you can line it up with the top left corner. That's what they say to do in the book, so we'll do it there. You can also line it up in the center later or whatnot, but I think the top left corner is helpful because then you don't have to worry about it sliding off the screen. Okay. Let's see what they want next. I'm pretty sure it's going to be to connect the button. Move the button to the upper left corner. Yeah, here's a problem with the book. It says your button needs to be given an action when it's tapped. Click the Assistant Editor button to split the Xcode. Well, this button no longer exists in the new version of Xcode. There is an editor here. You could add it this way, or you can go to up here to Editor Assistant. And you see mine splits it vertically. Yours might split it horizontally, left and right. Either way is fine. I like to minimize the side windows when I do this because it just gives me more space. And then you'll select the button that you want to connect to the code. So up here we've got the view controller storyboard. Down here we've got the view controller code, and we need to make a connection between the two. You want to hold, oops, not that. You want to hold Control down and click and drag from your button to your view controller. And let go. And this top one, there's outlets and there's actions. Outlets is kind of like the design, the layout of the button, but the action is when you actually click on the button. So we want to choose action here, and we want to do something when the button is pressed. So I'm going to call it button pressed action. You can call it button pressed. You can call it whatever you want, but I'm calling it button pressed action. You don't actually have to select type UI button, but I'm going to anyways. You could still keep it as any. Touch up inside is important. Just make sure that's selected, and that means that when the user releases their finger over the button, like you ever touch a button you accidentally didn't want to touch, and then you slide your finger off the button. Well, this is how that works. So it'll only execute the command if you release your finger after you touch the button. And then click Connect. So I'll put this function in here, down here for you, this code, and you'll see there's a little circle here with a dot. That means it's connected. Sometimes it doesn't. The dot doesn't fill in. Xcode gets a little funny sometimes, so this isn't like this isn't the end all be all if this isn't filled in. But essentially what this is here's what's going to happen when you click on the button. If you run the app right now, nothing's going to happen because you didn't put anything between the curly braces. So let's go ahead and just print something out to the console. Print button pressed. Okay, now let's build and run and just see what happens. Oh, make sure that you have a simulator selected here. Now build and run, and click the play button, or you can hit Command R. And my simulator popped up over here. If you just get a white simulator, maybe hold on a second, it might still be booting. But here's the button up here. You click on it, and then in the console, it's kind of hidden. It says button pressed, button pressed. So it's kind of working. We've connected the button to the code. All right, let's hit stop, and let's go back to the book. I think next they want you to turn a light on and off, a simulated light. It's not the real light. Build and run. Oh, they wanted to show you breakpoints. Breakpoint is like in your code here. You can click see how there's like a blue line, a blue bar here. That means when your code is executing, it'll stop at this point. It'll take a break here. So you can kind of debug. I don't really use breakpoints that much, but some people do. It lets you see like a snapshot of what's going on at each moment in your code. So to get rid of a breakpoint, you click and drag it off that bar there. I guess we'll build and run with the breakpoint just to show you what happens. Okay, so the app launched. And I'm trying to get this over here. Okay, and now when we click the button, it's almost going to look like it crashed. Like, oh gosh, what happened? But that's because the breakpoint started. And so you've got everything that's going on right now with your app, and to continue through your breakpoint, you click this button here, and then it continues the app. But again, I use print statements more than I use breakpoints, so that's just personal preference. Okay. Part 2, change the background. So if the light is on, the background color is going to be white. And otherwise, the background color is going to be black, it says. So it wants us to create a new a variable, a property, at the top, and call it light on. Okay. So inside of our view controller here, up at the top here somewhere, we're going to put a variable in there. It's going to be called light on. I'm actually going to call it is, well, let's just do what it says. Light is on equals, so what they're saying is the light is on should start out as true because the light is on is going to be a white screen. And you'll see when we launch the app already, it's already white, so we'll say that's true. And so down in here in the code, instead of printing out button pressed, what we're going to do is we're going to say, there's some really cool code that I didn't know existed until pretty much until today. And I've been doing this for many years. Is light is on equals exclamation point light is on. And this is illustrated in your book. And it took me a long time to figure out, well, why are we setting it to not be on? Well, it turns out this exclamation point at the beginning of a property, it's like creating a bit of a double negative and flipping it. So it basically flips things from true to false or false to true. If you come in here and the light is not on, it's going to make the light on. And if you come in here and the light is on, it's going to make the light off. So it pretty much flips it to the opposite. So that's what that's doing. I'm actually going to put a comment in there because it took me a while to figure that out. Flips to opposite. So it's not the same as doing this. I thought it was like, it's not that. It's not light is on equals false. It's if it's not on, then make it on. If it's on, then make it off. All right, and then we're going to do an if-else statement. So if the light is on, then we're going to want to turn it off, or else we're going to want to turn it on. So if the light is on, turn off. If the light is off, turn on. So to simulate the idea of a light on and off, they want us to use the background color. So you type view background color equals dot. So turn it off would be black, and then view background color down here equals dot white. Okay. So let's see. Does this make sense? We flip the switch, we flip the bool, and then we check if it's on. Actually, hang on a second, I might have that backwards. Yeah, I see. See, like the way I usually do this stuff, honestly, is I would say if the light is on, then turn it off, and then set the bool to light is on equals false. So that's how I usually do it, and then light is on equals true. So I make the change and then I change the bool afterwards. But, you know, let's follow the book's rule because it's kind of neat the way they're doing it. But in this case, if the light is on, then the background should be white, or else the background should be black. We could also check if the light is not on here. Like if light is on is equal to false. But it's a bool, so it's either on or off. It's either true or false. It wants a little else if. Else if light is on is equal to false. But it's a bool, so if the light is not on, it's off. We don't have to do all extra code. All right, let's see if this works. Got our button, flip the button, background turns off, background turns on. Off on, off on. If you go to launch your app and the Xcode crashes as soon as you launch it, you may have renamed something here. So once you make this connection to the storyboard, if you try to rename the button action, it'll crash. You have to break the connection and start over again pretty much. So just know once you make this connection, don't rename this function here, it'll break your app. The next thing I think in the instructions is it wants you to pull this code out and make it its own function. So they want you to clean it up a little bit, and so you take this whole conditional thing out. I'm going to hit Command X. What that does is it cuts it and copies it to the buffer, to your memory, so that I can paste it. So Command X is kind of like Command C, Command V kind of thing. Okay. So I'm going to make a new function, and we're going to call it update view. And remember, creating a function, you put the parentheses and the curly brace after the parentheses, and whatever happens between the curly brace is the action. And so I'm pasting that code in. That's the action. I don't like the way this is lining up, so I'm going to select it and go to Editor and Structure, Reindent. And now it'll kind of clean things up a little. And then here we want to execute the code we just made. So we're calling the function. That's what it's called. It's calling the function. So we're calling update the view. So now it flips the switch, updates the view, and you'll see if you highlight it, it's corresponding to this block of code down here. So that should do the same thing, but it just looks a little bit better. And it's what the book tells us to do. And we want to get an A. Okay. Flip the button, same effect. All right, that does it for the first part. I think this is going to be a two-parter. Let me just double check I didn't miss anything. Okay, there's a part 3. You know what? I'm just going to press on. So let's go to part 3. All right, part 3 is important, but a little bit dorky. So because they tell you to do something and then they tell you to undo it. So let's go through the part 3. I'm going to hit stop here, so the simulator stops. We're going to go back over to the view, the storyboard. So it was highlighted. I had to click away and click back. Oh, and cool, it's got my assistant editor down here already. If it didn't, then you'd want to turn it on and off up here in the editor. That's where I usually like to do it. I heard that you can do it elsewhere. That's thingy here, I think. And to close out, by the way, to close out the assistant editor, there's this X here. Okay, but we need to connect. What they want to do is they want to update the text. It says we want to say on or off based on if it's on or off. So we want the text to change basically. So select the button again, and then hold down Command. And I'm sorry, I always do that wrong. Hold down Control, click and drag, and then release it somewhere up here. You want to choose, this time we'll choose outlet. And so I'm going to call this button outlet. Okay. Now you notice there's not like a curly brace with a bunch of code in here. It's just saying there's something called a button outlet that can be affected. So what we want to do in the update view is we want to, this is not correct, comments. We want to, if the light is on, let's just do this. We're going to say button outlet, the thing we just made, dot set title. And if you hit enter, it kind of fills some of that stuff in for you. Put in quotes, the light is on. Doesn't really matter what you put in here for now because later they'll tell us to delete it. And like we wasted our time. But we're learning. Okay, so I'm going to copy this again and paste it down here. But down here, the light will be off. The light is on, the light is off. Okay, I'm going to build and run that, Command R, just to see if that works. What that should do is we've made a connection to this button, and it should change the text when we click the button. Notice at first it says button here. So click the button, and now it says toof. And now it says ton. Okay, the reason it's doing that is because we didn't give it enough space. So if you drag the button and make it larger, then build and run again, And eventually we got to learn about constraints so that it'll stretch to the view. But the light is off, the light is on. Okay. Another problem is when the user first launches the app, it just says button. So what we want to do is we want to run this update view function when the view first loads. So there's this function called viewDidLoad, and this is like one of the first things that happens aside from the app delegate. So in here I'm going to select update, or I'm going to call update view. So that means as soon as the view loads, let's update the text. So now the light is on, the light is off. All right, let's take a look at the book again. They also think that it's a little, they say it's a little weird that the button is kind of small. Yada, yada, yada. This is, we already did this. Design improvements, right? So they're saying, first of all, actually first they say it's actually kind of weird that it has to tell you the light is on or off. You can clearly see the light is on or off, right? You don't have to know that. So they suggest just taking out that text altogether. Fine. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to comment it out instead of taking it out, because maybe later we want to add that back in. But for now I'm commenting it out. And then they go on to say, well, you know, if you look, so I'm going to close this out. So we're in storyboards. I'm going to select the view. So I'm clicking away. I'm making sure there's a blue border around this bar up here. And if you select this little arrow that's pointing to the, well, to the right, then you'll see all the connections that are on this. Well, this is the outlet that we made, and like we don't need that anymore. We're not doing anything with it anymore. So you click that X button, and that breaks the connection there. I don't know why it's doing that, because it should just go away. Yeah, see, it went away. Now, if you wanted to make that connection again, here's another way to make the connection. You could just type the outlet code in here, and then you could select the whole thing and drag and drop it like that. So again, that's making a connection, and now we're breaking that connection. But what they're saying is, well, you don't have that connected, so you don't need that code either. So I'm going to comment that out as well. The other thing, the last thing that they say is, well, it's kind of weird that the button is like only here. What if we make the button the whole screen? Well, that's a design choice that you can make. And for me, I think that works. One other thing is, there's the text there, right? Well, how do I get rid of that button text? Well, there's two ways. You can, like, used to be able to double click. You can double click and just edit it, or you can go into, click on the button and go into the attributes inspector. I think that's what that's called. And then here's the text also. So I'm going to delete that. So now I've got a big button, no instructions. Honestly, what's going to happen is the user's going to launch the app and think it's broken. So I'm not a big fan of this design. I would say, if it were me, I would at least put, when it first launches, touch screen to turn on and off. Something like that. Because you want your apps to be intuitive, but so there. And maybe you put this text up at the top or something. These are just design questions. I don't know if you can do that with the button, can you? Yeah, it's this stuff down here. Top, bottom. So put it at the bottom there, and then I think there's a way to create padding on the bottom. Anyhow, you could spend hours getting your design just perfect, but for now, I think this is good to go. Let me see if I can do this. There, 320 pixels at the bottom. And then just real quick, because it's going to bother me, is I'm going to add constraints on. So I'm just going to I'll let Apple figure it out for me and choose add missing constraints. And that should just kind of lock it in place there. What that does is when you rotate the view, it should kind of stretch out to fit the view. And it didn't. So That'll be another lesson. I'll show you how to do that properly. Clear constraints. Boop, 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 boop. There, I just showed you. Touch on and off, rotate, touchscreen, turn it off. There, that's all right. And go back to the book, make sure that's all they wanted. Oh, okay, there's one other thing, is they want to do this fancy crap here. So this is called a ternary or operator. What is it? Where did they say it's somewhere here? Sorry, I'm babbling. It might look cleaner if it was a ternary operator instead of else. Okay, so let's do that. Okay, back in the view controller. So we're going back here, going back to the view controller. What they want is to clean up this code a little bit. So I'm going to comment this out. And let's see. I always forget how to do ternary operators, so let me get this all squared away. All right, so the deal is view background. We want to type out view background color is equal to light on question mark dot white and then colon dot black. That is some fancy ass code. Sorry about my swear. But basically this is replacing all of this code up here. View background color, if the light's on, white, or else black. I don't know. Honestly, I prefer this because I think it's more readable. But if you want to be fancy, then that's the fancy way. Boom, 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 boom. Same effect, just one line of code. Okay, that is the end. Thanks for tuning in, and hopefully this helps you out with the